All right, so today we're going to be doing a deep dive into asset protection and LLCs.
Okay.
And this is inspired by an episode of About That Wallet.
Oh, yeah. I listened to that one.
Oh, you did? Yeah, with Anthony Weaver. Yeah. And he's talking to Jonathan Feniak, who's an asset protection lawyer from LLCattorney.com.
I was going to say, he's got to be a lawyer.
And
yeah,
he is, and this is a really good one if you're an entrepreneur or if you have a family member who's maybe thinking about starting a business.
It is. Yeah, this is something that a lot of people, I think they don't think about when they're first starting out.
Right.
And it could be pretty critical.
Yeah, and Feniak has like a really interesting background.
Oh, yeah.
He
Tell me about it.
He was an English major.
Okay.
And then got into logistics.
Wow.
And then he was a hedge fund manager.
And
a financial advisor.
Okay.
And then
Wow.
And now he's an asset protection lawyer. So
I feel like I should listen to this one just for that. Like, how does that happen?
Right.
I know.
Yeah.
It's like,
That's quite a career trajectory.
I know, that's a wild ride, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I'm intrigued.
So yeah, I mean, he's coming at this from a lot of different directions.
Right. Yeah, a lot of perspectives.
And he really hits on right away this idea that like you can do everything right.
Right.
But like a single unexpected event could like wipe you out.
Totally.
And he uses this example of like imagine like you have a rental property.
Okay.
And there's a fire.
Right.
And someone gets hurt. And now you're facing this lawsuit that could wipe out your life savings.
Yeah, and you're thinking, well, I have insurance for that.
Right.
And that's the thing is like a lot of times insurance isn't going to cover everything.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's where asset protection comes in. And
yeah, that's why this is so important. I think people, they think, oh, I'm covered. I have insurance. I don't need to worry about that kind of stuff.
Right.
But this really kind of like, opens your eyes
to the fact that you could overcomplicate it too.
Right.
Yeah, he talks about that too.
Yeah.
So let's dive into that.
Okay, so yeah, let's get into like the nuts and bolts of like what is an LLC?
Okay.
Like how does that actually work?
Yeah.
So Feniak talks about this idea of like a risk bucket.
Okay.
It's like, okay, you set up an LLC, you put a certain amount of money into that LLC that's like in your bucket.
Okay.
And so like, let's say you put $100,000 into an LLC for your restaurant or something.
Okay.
If your business gets sued, even if they're suing you for $1 million, the most you're going to lose is that $100,000.
Okay.
That's in the bucket.
I see.
So your personal assets outside of that are protected.
So it's kind of like a firewall?
It is like a firewall.
Between you personally and your business.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah. So, and the states actually, like, they want you to do this.
Really?
Yeah, because it encourages entrepreneurship.
Would that make sense?
Right. Because they're saying like, hey, we want you to start a business.
Yeah.
But we're also going to give you these guardrails.
Yeah.
So if things go wrong.
Yeah, if you go belly up.
You don't lose everything.
You don't lose everything.
It's not like you're betting the farm every time you start a business.
Yeah, right. And that can be scary, right? Like, who wants to risk everything?
It's like going to the casino and putting all your chips on one bet every time.
Every time, exactly.
Yeah.
Who wants to live like that? So
yeah. So that makes sense.
But he also has these warnings about about taking asset protection too far.
Well, yeah. I mean, how do you take it too far?
Right. Well, he talks about these schemes you see online.
Oh yeah.
Like,
like the ads and stuff.
Like, become,
yeah, be invisible.
Invisible to creditors.
Yeah.
And he's like,
What is that all about?
Like, that's like having a home security system with a moat and alligators.
Like sometimes you just need a lock on your door.
Yeah, keep it simple.
Yeah. And he actually talks about a Supreme Court case.
Oh, wow.
Where this company tried to shield all their assets with all these LLCs, and it didn't hold up in court.
So the Supreme Court was basically like, nah, you're trying to hide stuff.
Yeah, they were like, this is too much.
Right.
Like, this is...
Interesting.
Yeah, so he's like, don't overcomplicate it.
Yeah, so it sounds like, obviously this is good to have the LLC, but you don't want to over-engineer it.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because he talks about this client he had.
Okay.
Who had like 3 different LLCs.
Okay.
Some of them were S-Corp.
Okay.
But they were all basically doing the same thing.
Oh.
Just with different names.
So just different branding.
Yeah. So he was like, why are you making this so complicated for yourself?
Right. And I bet that's a nightmare at tax time.
Oh, yeah.
3 different LLCs. Some of them S-Corp. Oh,
Yeah.
my goodness.
And also, like, you're just, like,
Yeah.
raising red flags.
Right. Yeah, exactly. The more complicated you make it, the more likely you are to
Yeah.
get audited or whatever.
And then he brings up this really interesting point.
Okay.
He compares an LLC operating agreement
Okay.
to a prenup.
Oh, to a prenup. Okay, so this is if you have a partner.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, if you're in business with somebody else.
Right, because you're not going to get married to your business. Hopefully not.
Hopefully not.
And it's like, you wouldn't
Yeah, but I see what you're saying.
go into a marriage without a prenup.
Without some sort of understanding.
Right.
Yeah.
You should have that same level of like
Forethought.
clarity with your business partners.
Right, so you know what happens if somebody wants out.
Right?
What happens if, God forbid, somebody dies or, gets sick
Yeah.
or something like that.
What are the spending limits?
Right.
What if one partner goes and like spends a
Yeah.
bunch of money, commits the business to something
Right, without
Yeah.
without the other person's knowledge.
without the other person being able to
Oh,
actually, contribute their half or whatever?
Yeah, he gives an example of like these two business partners.
Okay.
One of them committed the LLC
Uh-huh.
to a real estate purchase
Okay.
without the other one even knowing.
Oh.
So, and the other one couldn't even come up with the money.
Right, they didn't have it.
Yeah.
So that's a recipe for disaster.
Yeah.
Yeah, I see your point.
So, it's like really important to have that clarity up front.
Well, yeah, I mean, like, it's almost like anything else in life, right? Like,
Yeah.
you want to have those difficult conversations up front
Right.
so you can avoid the real problems down the road.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
Yeah. And so, I think this is a really good point
Yeah.
to just like stop and think, like, if you were starting a business with somebody, like,
Yeah.
what are the things
What are your non-negotiables?
right,
Yeah,
that you absolutely need to have in that operating agreement?
right. Like, what would keep you up at night?
Right.
Yeah,
What are you
right.
worried about?
Yeah.
So then he goes on to this other example, which I think is
Okay.
will resonate with some parents out there.
Right.
He's like, okay, imagine your 21-year-old kid
Okay.
wants to start a lemonade stand business.
All right, so cute, classic.
Right.
Yeah.
Seems pretty harmless, right?
Yeah.
Like, what's the worst that can
What-
happen?
Right. What are they going to get sued for?
Well, Feniak is like, even in that situation,
Uh-huh.
you need a business plan.
Okay. I mean, yeah, fair enough, but like,
Right.
it's a lemonade stand.
Well, but he's like,
Yeah.
what's the market?
Right.
Like, what are your costs?
What's your customer acquisition strategy?
Right. Like, how are you going to sell this lemonade?
Okay.
And he uses this example of the food service industry in general.
Okay.
He's like, it has a very high failure rate.
It does. Yeah. Restaurants are tough.
Right.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of unexpected complexities that can come up.
Like what?
Like, he mentioned that, like, Whole Foods requires $1 million liability policy
What?
for vendors.
A lemonade stand.
Or
I'm kidding.
getting a barcode,
Oh.
getting shelf space.
Yeah, that's true.
It's like,
I hadn't thought about that.
yeah. So it's like even something as simple as a lemonade stand
Right.
can get really complicated.
Yeah, it can snowball.
Right. And he's basically saying, like, you should treat your kid's business idea
Yeah.
with the same seriousness as you would treat any other investment.
Right. Don't just blow it off because it's cute.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because he actually started his own business when he was 14.
Oh, really?
Yeah. He had a skateboard company.
Oh, wow. Okay, so he's been doing this for a while.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Called Happy Dog Industries.
I love that. And so
Happy Dog Industry.
if you learned all these lessons about risk and reward,
from a very young age.
I mean, that's the best way to learn, right? Like when you're young and you don't have that much to lose.
Right.
Yeah.
And then he goes on to say, like, regardless of what your business is,
Right.
you have to be a salesperson,
Yeah. So like everybody's in sales.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, you could have the best product in the world,
Right.
but if you can't sell it,
You're not going to get anywhere.
you're not going to get anywhere.
Yeah.
And he's like, assume everything goes right.
Okay.
Like, you create your product or service.
Right.
It's perfect.
Yeah.
You have a website, you have marketing materials.
Yeah.
Now, how are you going to get people to buy it?
Okay. Yeah. How are you going to close those deals?
Yeah.
That's a good question to ask yourself.
Right.
Yeah.
And he's like,
Huh.
you actually should start with the sales side
Interesting.
and let everything else fall into place.
Huh.
So figure out that sales process first.
Okay. So like figure out your ideal customer. Like who is going to buy this?
Exactly.
And then figure out, okay, how do I talk to them? How do I reach them?
And this ties into this
Yeah.
concept of, like, your network
Yeah.
and building a network of what Malcolm Gladwell calls mavens.
Mavens.
Yeah.
Or apostles.
Like your super fans.
Yeah, like your early adopters.
Yeah, the people who will spread the word for you.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, so like So basically, like, what does this all mean for you?
Right. Let's bring it back.
Yeah.
We've talked about a lot.
Okay.
What are like the takeaways here?
Yeah. What are the action items?
So I think the first thing is like, you have to figure out like
Okay.
your risk tolerance.
Yeah.
Like, how much are you willing to risk?
How much skin are you willing to put in the game?
Right.
Yeah.
And that's going to inform like how
Okay.
you structure your business,
Yeah.
what kind of investments you make,
Right. Yeah.
all of that.
If you're very risk averse, maybe don't start a food truck.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then an LLC can be a really valuable tool
Right.
for asset protection, but it's not a magic bullet.
Right. It's not going to solve all your problems.
Right.
Yeah.
And you also have to think about, like, even when things are going well,
Right.
what's the worst case scenario?
Plan for the worst.
Yeah.
Hope for the best.
And then start simple. Don't, like, overcomplicate things from the beginning.
Yeah. Don't try to like, create some sort of super complex legal structure.
Right.
Yeah. When you're just starting out with your lemonade stand.
Right.
Keep it simple.
And then you can scale up as you need to.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Good advice. Yeah. We're gonna pause here
Okay.
and we'll come back
Yeah.
for part 2 of this deep dive.
I'm excited to see what else he has to say.
Yeah. This is a really good one.
Okay.
So stay tuned. We'll be
Okay.
back in a minute.
I'll be here. Welcome back. So, one thing that I thought was interesting in that episode was the way he kind of tied his own experience as an entrepreneur
Right.
to some of these points about LLCs and asset protection.
Right. Yeah.
He started a skateboard company when he was 14.
Oh yeah. Happy Dog Industries.
Happy Dog Industry.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
But yeah, he didn't have an LLC at the time.
Right.
But he was, already thinking about, like, okay, how much money do I have to put into this? How much risk am I taking?
Right.
And it's interesting because a lot of these principles, they apply whether you're running a lemonade stand or, a Fortune 500 company.
Right. It's all about managing risk. And,
And being smart about it.
Yeah, and being smart about it and planning ahead.
Yeah, and it's funny because he tells this story about how he hired a friend to design the logo for Happy Dog Industries.
Okay.
And he didn't have any kind of formal agreement. And so he's like, looking back, I don't even know if I own the rights to that logo.
Oh, okay.
It's like, even when you're starting out small,
Right.
it's important to think about these things.
Yeah, it's easy to overlook that stuff when you're just like excited to get going.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that that's something that he kind of emphasizes throughout the whole interview is like the importance of getting advice from experts. Like he talks about how much he enjoys learning from other lawyers, especially lawyers who specialize in like bankruptcy or divorce or litigation.
Interesting.
And he's like, I want to understand how those things work so I can better protect my clients.
Yeah, because he's basically trying to think of like, okay, what could go wrong?
Right, exactly.
Why?
He's playing devil's advocate.
And how do we prevent that?
Yeah, how do we protect against that?
Yeah, and he even talked about, staying up to date on like recent legal developments. Like there's this Corporate Transparency Act.
Oh, yeah, I've heard of that.
Yeah, and he was kind of like,
What is that about?
it's more nuanced than people think.
Okay.
And you really need to understand the details.
Right.
And like talk to an expert.
Yeah, don't just rely on like some random blog post.
Right.
Yeah. Talk to a lawyer
Exactly.
who knows what they're talking about.
So, for our listeners out there who are maybe thinking like, okay, that's great information.
Yeah.
But where do I even begin?
Yeah, like how do I actually put this into practice?
Yeah, what would Feniak say?
Well, he's a big advocate for starting simple and scaling up as needed.
Oh, shit.
So like he uses this example of like, someone who has this like brilliant tech idea, but they haven't even written a line of code yet. And they're already like, oh, I need to form a Delaware C Corp.
Right.
And he's like, whoa, whoa, whoa.
Hold your horses.
Hold your horses.
Yeah.
Like, just start with a simple Wyoming LLC.
Okay, so why Wyoming?
Well, Wyoming is known for being like very business friendly.
Okay.
They have a really straightforward legal structure.
Okay.
It offers a good level of privacy for business owners.
Okay.
And it's generally less expensive to form an LLC in Wyoming than in some other state.
Okay, so that's like your starting point.
That's your starting point.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then as you grow,
yeah.
you can convert it to a corporation later.
Right.
Or domesticate it to Delaware.
You need to raise venture capital or something like that.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
So it's all about like being strategic and adaptable.
Right, meeting your needs now.
Right.
But also keeping in mind what might happen in the future.
Yeah, and he talked a lot about kind of the mindset that you need to have for entrepreneurial success.
What did he say about that?
Well, he really hammered home this point about being sales focused.
Okay.
Like regardless of what your business is, you have to figure out how you're going to get people to buy your product or service.
Right. Yeah. Everybody's in sales.
Yeah.
Whether you realize it or not.
And he actually said, like, flip the script a bit.
Okay.
Like, instead of thinking about like, okay, I'm going to build this product and then people will come.
Right.
He's like, start with the sales process.
Interesting.
Like, assume everything goes perfectly.
Okay.
You develop your product.
Yeah.
You build your website. You're ready to launch.
Okay.
Now, how are you going to get those customers?
Okay. So start with the end in mind.
Right.
Yeah. Work backwards.
Exactly.
Okay.
And that kind of forces you to think about like, okay, who is my ideal customer?
Right.
What's my message?
How do I reach them?
Exactly.
What are their pain points? How do I solve their problems?
Yeah, and that ties into this whole idea of like the mavens and the apostles.
Right, those early adopters.
Right.
The people who are going to be your biggest fans.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like spread the word for you.
Yeah, and it's so much more effective than like, just throwing money at ads.
Yeah, it's like authentic marketing.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, word of mouth is the best marketing.
It really is.
Yeah, and it's free.
It is. Yeah, that's a good point.
So, he also talked a little bit about kind of his personal definition of wealth.
Oh, yeah. What did he say about that?
He was saying like, it's not just about the number in your bank account.
Okay.
It's about having optionality.
Okay.
Like having the freedom to make choices.
So like the freedom to say no?
Right.
The freedom to walk away from a deal that you don't feel good about?
Exactly.
The freedom to, start a business that you're passionate about, even if it doesn't make a ton of money.
It's like, what do you want your life to look like?
Right. Yeah, exactly. What's important to you?
And he also talked about managing expenses.
Oh,
like even as your income increases,
right.
It's easy to fall into this trap of lifestyle inflation.
Lifestyle inflation, yeah.
Where like you just keep spending more and more.
As you make more and more.
Yeah. And you never actually get ahead.
Right. Yeah. You're on that hedonic treadmill.
Right.
Yeah.
And he actually shared a story about how he learned this lesson the hard way.
During the 2008 financial crisis.
Yeah.
Okay.
He had built this like comfortable lifestyle based on his high income.
Mm-hmm.
But then when that income took a hit, he was kind of like, oh, wait a minute.
I'm not as secure as I thought I was.
Right.
Yeah.
So his biggest money mistake was not having that buffer.
Right. Not saving enough.
Yeah. Not having that cushion.
Not being prepared for a rainy day.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a good lesson for all of us.
And I remember he's a big fan of Malcolm Gladwell.
Oh, yeah.
And he specifically mentioned
the tipping point.
The tipping point,
Yeah.
And he was talking about these ideas of like mavens and apostles.
Right.
These people who have like an outsized influence.
Yeah, those influencers.
Yeah. So again, it's like, building that loyal following.
Right, finding your tribe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then of course, like, you can't forget about his love of paella.
Oh, yeah, the paella.
I was picturing him in his backyard, like paella pans sizzling on the grill.
Orange wood charcoal.
Delicious. Yeah. It's like, even as we're talking about all this like serious business stuff.
Yeah.
It's important to remember.
To enjoy life.
Yeah, like, what are the things that bring you joy?
Right, what are you passionate about? Yeah.
What makes you tick?
So I think we've covered a lot of ground here.
We have, yeah.
In the second part of our deep dive.
Yeah. What have we learned?
So we talked about the importance of getting expert advice.
Okay.
Starting simple and scaling up as needed.
Yeah.
Cultivating a sales-focused mindset.
Mm-hmm.
We talked about Feniak's personal definition of wealth,
right?
The importance of managing expenses, and the power of building a loyal following.
And finding those mavens and apostles.
Yeah.
Yeah, but there's still more to uncover.
There is.
So join us for the final part of our deep dive.
Okay.
Where we'll wrap up
I'm ready.
our exploration of Jonathan Feniak's insights from the About That Wallet podcast.
Okay. All right, I'll be here.
All right, so welcome back to the final part of our deep dive. And one thing that really struck me throughout this whole episode of About That Wallet was Feniak's emphasis on mindset.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Like he's saying, you can have all the right legal strategies, all the right financial strategies, but ultimately comes down to like your attitude.
Right, your approach.
Your approach.
Yeah.
And he makes this point about how like he's often like the most negative person in the room.
Oh, yeah, he said that.
Yeah, he's always like playing devil's advocate.
All right, he's always thinking about like what could go wrong.
Right.
What are the worst case scenarios?
Yeah, and that's what makes him so good at his job.
Right, because he's anticipating those problems and figuring out how to avoid them.
And he's like,
hope for the best, but plan for the worst.
Exactly.
And I think that's like a really good...
It's a good life lesson in general.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he's also like, don't be afraid of the unknown.
All right. Embrace the uncertainty.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And for anyone out there who's like feeling hesitant or overwhelmed, it's like, just start small.
You're like...
Test the waters.
Dip your toes in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And scale up as you gain experience and confidence.
Right.
Don't try to do everything at once.
Don't overthink it.
Right.
Just start.
Yeah, and speaking of getting started,
okay.
Remember that discount that LLCattorney.com is offering our listener?
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Yeah, it's a good one.
Yeah, it's a really good one. So use the code WalletPod100 at checkout.
Okay.
And you'll get 100% off your initial LLC formation fee.
Wow, that's amazing. So, all right, so to kind of wrap things up here.
Yeah.
What are the key takeaways?
Yeah, let's recap.
Yeah.
What have we learned? So first and foremost, understand your risk tolerance.
Okay.
Like, how much are you comfortable risking?
How much are you willing to lose?
Right.
Yeah.
And that's going to inform all your decisions about your business structure.
Yeah.
Your investments.
Yeah.
Your overall financial strategy.
If you're risk averse.
Yeah.
Maybe starting a business is not the best idea.
Right.
Or maybe you need to find a partner who's more willing to take risks.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then LLCs are a great tool.
They are.
For asset protection.
Uh-huh.
But they're not a magic bullet.
Right. You still need to be smart.
Right.
You still need to have good contracts.
You need to do your due diligence.
Yeah.
And you need to plan ahead.
Always plan ahead.
Yeah, anticipate those challenges.
Right.
And have a contingency plan.
What's the worst that could happen?
Right.
And how are you going to deal with it?
Exactly. And don't forget our mindset.
Right.
Believe in yourself. Be persistent.
Stay positive.
Yeah. Stay adaptable.
Yeah.
Surround yourself with good people.
Find your tribe.
Yeah.
Your mentors, your advisors.
Yeah, and find joy in the journey.
Yeah.
Entrepreneurship can be tough.
It can be a roller coaster.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's also incredibly rewarding.
It is.
So celebrate those wins.
Yeah.
Learn from your setbacks.
Uh-huh.
And just keep that entrepreneurial fire burning.
Keep that passion alive.
Yeah. So to all our listeners out there.
Yeah.
Keep exploring, keep learning, keep diving deep.
Yes.
And, whether you're whipping up a batch of paella or launching the next big thing, we're here to support you every step of the way.
Absolutely.
And be sure to check out the About That Wallet podcast.
Yes.
For more fantastic financial advice.
They're great.
You can find them on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube.
Wherever you get your podcasts.
Wherever you get your podcasts.
Yeah.
Be sure to subscribe, give them a 5-star rating.
All that good stuff.
All that good stuff. And until next time.
Happy venturing.
Happy venturing.